So over the weekend, President Trump asked for the resignations of 46 U.S. attorneys that served under President Obama. Nothing particularly unusual about that, although it was something of a rushed exit. But this included Preet Bharara, who's in the middle of prosecuting or investigating several high-profile or well-connected Democrats, not to mention looking into the Fox News matter. Was it a mistake by the president to go back on his promise and to fire Bharara?
Well, I don't know what his promise was to Mr. Bharara, but I do know that other administrations have done the same thing, perhaps not in as abrupt a fashion, but that's what elections have consequences. And so for people to complain about it, they're ignoring the history of new presidencies, and I think the president had every right to ask for their resignations.
We learned this week that General Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor for President Trump, was working as a foreign agent last year while he was advising President Trump's campaign. Flynn notified the transition team and the White House lawyers about the work he had done for Turkey, but this information was not disclosed to the public, nor did he file the proper paperwork until this week. Does this trouble you at all that the national security advisor had been, until recently, a paid advocate for a foreign government?
Jake, there's a lot of things about our relations with Russia that trouble me a lot. For example, why was the provision in the Republican platform that called for the provision of defensive weapons to Ukraine after being invaded by Russia, why was that taken out of the Republican platform? Clearly, it was not the will of most Republicans. There's a lot of aspects of this whole relationship with Russia and Vladimir Putin that requires further scrutiny, and so far I don't think the American people have gotten all the answers. In fact, I think there's a lot more shoes to drop from this centipede.
Do you think General Flynn advocating on behalf of Turkey in that way was part of this whole Russian situation?
I don't know. I know that he was in Moscow and at a dinner with Putin, and I'm not sure that on its face is anything wrong, but there continues to surface communications between not just General Flynn, but other members of the Trump family, quote, and associates, that Mr. Manafort's relationship with Yanukovych, the stooge of Vladimir Putin that they finally threw out of Ukraine, still has a lot of questions to be answered, and so far they're not being answered.
Longtime Trump confidant Roger Stone told the Washington Times on Friday that he had exchanged messages online with Guccifer 2.0. He called them completely innocuous, but Guccifer 2.0, as you know, is the entity that claims to be behind the hack of the Democratic National Committee. Stone has also tweeted that he had a back channel to Julian Assange during the campaign. Do you think Roger Stone should be called to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings?
Oh, I think, obviously, I think he and others need to be questioned. There's no doubt that Mr. Stone was closely associated again with Mr. Yanukovych, who was, thanks to the rising up of millions of Ukrainian people, was thrown out of office at the Maidan, this demonstration in the square of national will of Ukrainian people that is as impressive as anything I've ever seen. This whole issue of the relationship with the Russians and who communicated with them and under what circumstances clearly cries out for investigation. But I would also point out we should not assume guilt until we have a thorough investigation. I'm not judging anyone guilty.
Speaking of assuming guilt, a week ago, President Trump made a stunning allegation. He tweeted that President Obama had wiretapped him at Trump Tower during the campaign. On Monday, you said that if President Trump has any information that would indicate that his predecessor wiretapped Trump Tower, he should come forward with the information. The American people deserve it. That's your quote. The White House is supposed to hand over any evidence it has to back this charge to the House Intelligence Committee by tomorrow, but a White House official this morning is suggesting they might not turn anything over. If there's no proof for what the president said, and we know that the FBI director has said it's not true and the former director of national intelligence has said it's not true, should President Trump take back his charge and apologize to President Obama and to the American people?
Well, President Trump has to provide the American people, not just the Intelligence Committee, but the American people with evidence that his predecessor, former President of the United States, was guilty of breaking the law, because our Director of National Intelligence, General Clapper, testified that there was absolutely no truth to that allegation. So I think the President has one of two choices: either retract or to provide the information that the American people deserve, because if his predecessor violated the law, President Obama violated the law, we've got a serious issue here, to say the least.
But there's no one I've heard who has any information relating to the FBI or intelligence, including Vice President Pence, Sean Spicer, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who has said that they know of any information that backs this up. Do you have any reason to think that this charge is true?
I have no reason to believe that the charge is true, but I also believe that the President of the United States could clear this up in a minute. All he has to do is pick up the phone, call the Director of the CIA, Director of National Intelligence, and say, okay, what happened? Because they certainly should know whether the former President of the United States was wiretapping Trump Towers.
Do you have any concern about the constant barrage of conspiracy theories we keep hearing from the President?
Well, the President obviously has a unique style. He was elected President of the United States, and I'm not telling him how he should conduct that presidency, but I do believe that on an issue such as this, accusing a former President of the United States of doing something which is not only illegal, but just unheard of, then that requires corroboration. And I'll let the American people be the judge, but this is serious stuff, Jake, because if true, or the allegation is left out there, it undermines the confidence the American people have in the entire way that the government does business.
Mexico's top diplomat came to Washington Thursday with meetings with the U.S. government. Instead of meeting with the Secretary of State, he met with Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and advisor to the president, and other White House aides. The State Department spokesman apparently did not even know that he was coming to Washington. Are you concerned that the Trump White House might not respect the State Department as much as, say, you do?
Well, Mr. Tillerson has not been very outspoken since he has become Secretary of State. And I think we ought to give him a chance as Secretary of State to perform. But obviously, Jake, the optics of people coming to town who are foreign leaders and without the knowledge of the Secretary of State is not good. But I keep trying to remind myself that we're still in the first 50 or 60 days of this presidency, and we don't want to prejudge. There's no doubt that this president has approached the office of the presidency in a different fashion than his predecessors, but he was elected by the American people.
EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt said this week that carbon dioxide is not a primary contributor to climate change. Take a listen.
I agree that it's a primary contributor to the global warming that we see.
Back in 2008, Senator, you said, quote, "I believe climate change is real. I think it's devastating." Are you at all uncomfortable with an EPA administrator who would say what he said?
I am, but I'm also uncomfortable with environmentalists who categorically reject nuclear power as one of the most clean and efficient ways of generating energy. And so let's see what Mr. Pruitt has to authenticate his allegations. But again, Mr. Pruitt was widely respected, and I voted for him, and I'd like to give him a chance.
Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona. Senator, thank you so much. It's always good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Jake.